Okay, hey everybody. My name is Kyle Bruce. I'm the Senior Deputy Athletic Director for External Relations at the University of Pittsburgh. We're joined today by representatives from the three 2025 NACMA Marketing Team of the Year winners for a great conversation around planning and preparation for the upcoming year. This group is going to offer tremendous insight and advice about how to maximize the offseason and really lay the foundation for what may ultimately lead to an award-winning year for your school. So I have a few questions queued up for them that they'll share kind of what has allowed them to be successful as teams of the year in their respective groups. One housekeeping item before we jump in. Memberships are now available for renewal. The deadline to renew your NACMA membership is September 30th in order to maintain your member benefits for the 2025-26 academic year. So visit members.nacta.com to access your membership portal and renew your membership. And again, that deadline is September 30th. Okay, introductions. We're joined today, again, like I said, by representatives of the three groups who received Team of the Year honors at the 2025 convention. JC Whitten, Senior Associate AD for Brand Advancement and External Operations at Virginia Tech. Nick Halsey, Associate AD for Marketing and Communications at Montana. And John Wepking, Associate AD for External Relations at Minnesota State Moorhead. Thank you three for spending some time with us today. If you're ready, we'll go ahead and dive into some questions. JC, we'll start with you on this one, and then we'll go Nick and John. Becoming Team of the Year obviously doesn't just happen overnight. How are you and your team laying the groundwork over the summer to ensure you're prepared for the upcoming year?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of planning, and I don't want anyone to think we're planning with the end goal of marketing team of the year. We're planning with our own end goals that we need for our institution, that hopefully leads to awards. But yeah, so much planning. And our team is like way smarter than me, so I can take zero credit, and the credit all goes to them. But just a few things from a marketing perspective. Our marketing team has gone ahead and put together this roadmap for the next year that has all of our sports and all of our major initiatives and campaigns, and kind of sets it against a 12-month calendar. And so they can see when is a planning phase, when is an execution phase, and when is a review phase, and what is overlapping at certain points throughout the year, so they can hopefully have a plan of how to utilize their time, utilize the resources to make sure that we are, setting ourselves up for success throughout the year. Things that we're really trying to focus on are obviously like anything to do with cash, so sales and revenue goals, some brand identity adjustments, like where do we want to tweak things to keep it fresh, working with our sponsorship and MMR partners. So all of that, and just looking really at our people and our resources and their time. Like, we want to make sure we're doing things because there's value to it and it moves our department along, and we're not just doing things to like check the box or appease a coach or whatever that may be.
JC, quick follow-up for you. How are you ensuring the conversations are happening? Or do you have a meeting cadence? Like, what's your setup in the summer to make sure that the right things are happening?
Yeah, so we have a pretty robust meeting schedule, and it's probably to the point of meeting fatigue for some people. So we are trying to like make sure we're getting the right people in the right rooms at the right times and trying to reevaluate that. But we have various groups that meet either weekly or biweekly on a number of topics. So that can include sales, planning, the tactical and logistical work of sales, our digital strategy with emails and advertising, meetings about our in-venue experience, particular to football in the summer, creative strategy meetings and storytelling. So we're lucky to have a large team, and so we can divvy up all of these responsibilities, and people can spend the time meeting and talking about them. But yeah, we have a pretty robust meeting schedule that I think probably wears people out some days.
Awesome. Thank you. Nick, what about you at Montana? How are you and your team kind of laying the foundation in these critical months?
Yeah, I think that kind of what JC said is similar to what we do in terms of road mapping, using the summer months to kind of really look at the upcoming academic year and the calendar as best you can to kind of lay things out. Kind of coming up with, how do we want to implement things at certain times? How can we best get ahead of things? I think some things that, we try to do is, for instance, this year we've got 8 home football games, and so I'm just taking one game per week during the summer to just kind of start mapping out certain in-game elements, promotions, giveaways, things like that to just try to get his head as much as possible. I will say, I think that as we all are aware in this industry, you have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt. And so, even if we have a roadmap, it's maybe putting it in pencil, knowing that some things are going to come up and change. That we had that happen this year with a basketball game that got moved to ESPN on late night, and that was actually one of the things that we were recognized for. But that was something that we never went into the year expecting to do, and then mid-season kind of had to change and adapt and move things around. So you've got to be flexible, but I think you also have to utilize the time that you can right now. I think that the other thing that I'd say is just being able to kind of sit back during this time to reflect on the past year and see what went well and see what you want to improve upon. I think that goals to me are only good if you can track them and measure them and you kind of circle back to them. I think that sometimes, and I'm guilty of this at times, but sometimes I think that we set goals and then never actually think about them again until the next year. And then all of a sudden you're like, I can't even remember what I wanted to accomplish and stuff. And so that is something that we try to do as a team to take a little bit of time to set some measurable goals that can be tracked. And then we try to follow up with them on a every couple months throughout the year of, hey, are we measuring towards that? Are we falling off this way? If we need to adjust what that goal is, how can we do that so that we're, kind of moving in the right direction? But I do think that as long as it's something that is measurable and that you can track, setting goals during this time is really important.
Nick, if I could follow up, how much of your summer and your team's summer is spent looking backward and reviewing versus planning and looking forward? You talk about goals, which are really important, and understanding your success in relation to those goals. So if you had to kind of give us a little bit of insight on how your team is attacking reviewing versus planning.
Yeah, I would say I don't. The majority of it is definitely moving forward, looking ahead towards the next year, trying to, set yourself best up for the fall sports that are coming up, and then even the winter once it gets really crazy into the fall and you can't be thinking about winter sports and everything. But like I said, I think that you're doing a disservice if you're not thinking about if you're just going into things the way that you've always done things or the way that you did it last year. You're kind of just moving you're just moving forward without actually thinking about what is most beneficial and most effective. And I think we're all experiencing that in this new age of college athletics and NIL and just everything that we're doing and adapting to and things like that. I think that you do have to reflect back a little bit to kind of think of what went well, what went poorly, but then also how do we need to change things, even if it went awesome. There's going to be certain things that just need to be looked different because of how college athletics is changing.
Awesome. And John, for you, obviously you have an army of student interns, and so the definition of your team may look different than Nick or JC's. So how are you and your team, and whether it's full-time or student interns, attacking the summer months to make sure you're ready for the upcoming year?
Yeah, our full-time staff is myself and a CSC, and that's it. And 60, 70, sometimes 80 to 100 interns. And so, yes, it does look very different. Our summer starts with our end of year go team meeting, which is right around our end of year student athlete celebration time. And we go through every year a start, stop, keep, and improve process. And we break up into groups. Each group talks about what we need to start, what we need to stop doing, what we need to keep doing, and what needs improvement. And that just kind of kicks off kind of that reflection. We always reflect week to week. We just do what's called a good, bad, and ugly. What's good that people need to shout out or kudos for, what was bad that we noticed that nobody else did, and then we all know the uglies that a fan or an external person might have seen. So we're constantly reviewing as happens because, to Nick's point, you never do it if you don't integrate it into your day to day, and you just forget some of those things and some of those notes, and we trickle those down into that meeting to make sure that we don't repeat the same mistakes that we did in the prior year and the prior events. After that point, it kind of starts with NACMA kind of stuff a little bit because we wait for all those best practices to rip off and duplicate. Literally, I have an intern go through every single one of your guys' work, rip off things that we can steal, categorize them, obviously, and figure out how we can make them ours. We spend a couple hours going through all the nuggets that she's found, and start moving them into different buckets. So our buckets, I mean, to Nick's point, a pencil. We do whiteboards. I got whiteboards all over the damn place here. It's ridiculous how many whiteboards we have. We have a whiteboard that's completely full of opportunities, things we knew we were going to run into this year, like a new video board install outside. So that's a new opportunity that we need to leverage and we're intentional with. To JC's point, revenue has got to be its own column. So really going through each and one of our revenue streams and making sure that we're intentional, tickets, donations, sponsorships, special, making sure that we're really spending time growing our revenue pieces. Content. What are some innovative pieces of content that we're seeing and have seen that we can integrate into media days, which are vastly quickly approaching for us? They're not around in the summertime for us to do those. So we slam them all into late August, early September. We got 13 of them, 14 of them done by November 1st. And so we were cruising through those. So what content ideas do we need to be intentional about for those media days? Just the Go team itself, this organism, how can we improve it? How do we keep it fluid? Because there's new people coming in and new experiences and new greats here and not so greats in this area. So to keep that fluidity and that structure going, to maintain being where we're at and our expectations has been difficult. So we really spent a lot of time on the culture and ways to make that better. Buy list. What are the orders that need to happen now? So we're not waiting for things to show up last minute or rushing and wasting money on rush orders when it comes to the fall and winter seasons. Fixes are always my favorite. That's usually my responsibility in the summertime, fixing all the stuff that I broke. And then we just have our idea farm that sits on the side of theme nights, crazy things, things to activate a sponsorship with. I do the sponsorship sales. So I'm meeting with sponsors and trying to get activations and new sponsors from May until July-ish, mid-July-ish. There's always a few that trickle in, the new ones after I get renewals done. And just trying to create as much fun as we can possibly have on our game day experiences.
That's fantastic. Sounds like I'm not sure how you get any time off. That's incredible though. I think that is in and of itself a credit to why you and your team have been successful, is that approach and that intentionality around looking at what people have done and how you can make it your own. You talked about kind of bucketing the submissions that other folks have uploaded into kind of three areas. Obviously, NACMA has its three pillars: brand advancement, fan development, revenue generation. Are you looking, and maybe you kind of already answered this one, but if you want to expound on it, are you looking at those pillars as directions for ultimately building a marketing plan? And how are you using those pillars to guide your efforts?
Yeah. So the next step is we take all of those ideas, those columns, and we put it into a project management software called Asana. That's what we use. They don't pay me for that soft plug, but we try to create the comp plans for all the sports in the summertime. So when our interns hit, they're ready to go. But we are doing that with, as far as the pillars go, yes. Um, Not as intentional as this pillar, that pillar, all of these little subcategories that we do get into in the awards piece. We just focus on trying to get a little bit better every day. That's our coach talk cliche that we love to always use, right? Bull Durham style. But it's just trying to get a little bit better at the things we've done, because the things we've done are really good. They're really, really good. And if we can just keep getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, awards in those columns tend to happen. To JC's point, we don't start with the award in mind. We just try to continue to plug away, and the pillars are there for a reason. I mean, the brand development, the revenue generation, they all align to what we're trying to do. It's kind of nice for me because my external department is all one group, and it's not segmented, it's not siloed, it's all just together. And so our content team is working with our comms team, and our graphic designers are working with our stats people to create great infographics. And so it's really kind of cool to have that opportunity. And I know there are some challenges with getting deep in specificity there too, but it keeps it moving. But yes, the pillars are huge, but not as intentional, I guess, but they are definitely there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Nick, what about you at Montana? Do you and your team think about kind of those verticals when you're crafting your marketing plans for the year?
Yeah, I think so. I think that kind of like John said, they're there for a reason. They're pillars in NACMA, because they're foundations that we all need to focus on. And I'll be honest, when I started in this industry, I was very focused on fan enhancement. What can we do to bring fans in and get them excited in the in-game experience. And I still think that out of everything is what excites me and what makes me want to, what drives me in terms of why I'm in marketing. But I think that the direction that I've been receiving a lot from our upper administration and from our campus right now, like it is probably for a lot of places, is how can we drive revenue? How can we find new revenue streams? How can we operate in a way that is bringing more people into our buildings and squeezing anything that we can out of them? And so that has kind of influenced a little bit of how we operate in terms of what are we doing that is maybe in a different way, that unfortunately might mean that my fan enhancement takes a little bit of a hit because I know that our end goal is a little bit different from what I want it to be or what I would hope it would be and stuff. But knowing that this is the direction that we are being asked to do it, and knowing that also there are ways that you can operate where you've got revenue first as a mindset that can still be advantageous, from a fan standpoint or brand enhancement and things like that.
I want to follow up real quick on one thing you noted there about there are folks on campus and the desire to drive revenue. Obviously, no matter what size school you are, there's a ton of stakeholders in the work that we do, and we need a ton of partnerships to be successful. Whether it's Montana or elsewhere, Nick, how are you working with your third party folks on campus and corporate partnerships, whatever the case may be, kind of in your planning process this summer?
Yeah, I think that the more you can bring them in now, the better off you're going to be in terms of not cramming late. And the product will just be better at that point as well because you can plan things out, where we've got a military appreciation football game and we've probably had 3 or 4 meetings already throughout the spring and summer that is going into September. And so I think that the more people that you can bring in and the more partners that you can bring in, it just kind of enhances the product all across the board. And again, the more that you can do now, the more it's going to free you up in the future. Like I mentioned in my first answer, like things are going to change. You have to be flexible. And so then the more you can plan out initially, that allows you to be flexible without feeling the stress of cramming.
Awesome. And JC, what about Virginia Tech? Are you encouraging your staff to think about the three pillars as they craft marketing plans, and how are you getting that message across to them?
Yeah, I think like similar to what John and Nick have said, they're certainly foundational to our industry and kind of what is like they're the pillars of like what we all do. So even though we may not be talking about them directly as it relates to NACMA, like there's certainly things that we concentrate on just as like these are the things we need to be great at. Like Nick said, we're kind of in a position where revenue needs to come first these days. But that doesn't mean the other two fall by the wayside. One thing that we've started talking about is certainly revenue comes first, but that doesn't have to always mean in the form of selling a ticket or a trinket or and whatever. It can also be in the form of having a really great in-venue experience that people want to come back to multiple times, meaning from driveway to driveway. Like we need to think about gate entry and how those things can impact someone's repeat decision to come back. And then we talk about it with our content team a lot too. Like they just want to make cool stuff, which we love, but like, is there a way to make cool stuff that also has a brand, and a storytelling piece that pulls at those heartstrings that hopefully has an indirect tie to revenue down the road. Like we use the marketing funnel so much at Virginia Tech, and we talk about everyone's responsible for different parts of the funnel, whether that's getting someone into the top and being aware of our brand or bringing them down to where they buy a ticket or a t-shirt or whatever. And so everyone can play a role in that, even if it's not a direct like, hey, you clicked this link and gave us your credit card.
If I could follow up with you on that, how do you get your team to do that in real time? Because as much planning as we can do in the summer, and we've all talked about it on this call, right? There's so much that goes into the actual like things arise that we can't plan for. So how do you encourage your team to approach those real-time moments?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want to plan as much as possible, and we talk about like be prepared for the outcome, don't wait for the moment, like be prepared for the moment. But again, that's not always going to happen. And so I think it's just trying to always double down with our team and just remind them like, okay, what are our overarching goals and what are the strategies and tactics that are going to get us there. Again, it doesn't work perfectly, and we're going to have those 5 alarm fires and we're going to be scrambling at certain moments, but our hope is that people keep that in the back of their mind and they're preparing for the moment, even though they may not know exactly what that moment's going to be, as opposed to having to react to the moment.
Perfect example. Right now at Montana, they're having a fire alarm test. And so Nick is transitioned from his office to his phone. So Nick, we hope you can hear us.
I'm back. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, glad you're safe. John, if you would, can you also maybe provide some insight from your perspective on real-time activations versus those you can plan for and how you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, to JC's point, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? John Wooden. And so you try to prepare as much as humanly possible, but we work in sports. We work with people who have very different needs and different opinions and levels of expectations. And so you have to be nimble and prepared for those things. And so, one of the things that we did is, we all run into difficult people. How could we better train our welcome staff, our table workers to be prepared for an angry fan? Right? If that keeps happening, how can we prepare in advance rather than just saying, hey, because it's students for me, expecting a student to be an expert at customer service isn't something I can do. And so I need to provide that training and structure for them. So we went with the Disney Institute, did a big D2 training piece, and they came up with a great plan for that. And we put it on the back of their staff passes to remind them, all of us are customer service people. And here's a great reminder of exactly how to process a difficult moment. Listen. It's LEADD, 2 Ds for D2 because, branding, right? So listen, empathize, apologize, decide, and deliver. And so we put that on the back of all their staff passes to help them if they ever have them. Oh, what do I do? This person's really upset. Boom. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. I understand. I would be really mad if my kid slipped in a puddle and hurt their arm. I'm sorry, that shouldn't happen. I am going to take you right now to our athletic training staff, and I want you all to come with us. We're going to go down there and we're going to make sure he's okay. And we're going to make sure that we take care of you in some way, shape, or form with some MSUM t-shirts or make sure that you guys get some commemorative balls or a stuffed dragon. Like just making sure that we over deliver in that and make sure to ask if there's anything else that we can possibly do. But just preparing for the chaos is always the trick that we try to control, but we can't. We can't always control what happens in situations as far as an injury that happens for 30 minutes or the lights go out or a fire alarm. Things happen in sports when there's a lot of people around. A board might not pop on quite right, or who knows. And you just got to have as much redundancy as humanly possible built in, backup plans on backup plans on backup plans. And so we try to really build that depth into how we operate as much as we possibly can. You can't control it all. And in those moments, focus on grace, focus on patience. Don't remember calm is contagious. If you get riled up as the leader, everybody else is going to get riled up. If you get pissy as leader, if you get calm, when stuff hits the fan, everybody's going to be calm. And that's really, really important when it goes crazy.
I think those collective answers are indicative of why the three of you and your schools have received these Team of the Year awards. I think you think long term, and then obviously, like you all have articulated, there's those real time adjustments and planning that are mission critical. If we could maybe end with a piece of advice about how other schools could maximize kind of their summers. JC, if you would start us off, whether it's a piece of advice or what is one thing you make sure you always do in the summer to set yourselves up for success?
Yeah, this is going to sound super like counterintuitive. But to set ourselves up for success, we make sure our people rest in the summer. And so like the athletic year, like you go, 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 you don't get a break. And so like the summer has to be your time to recharge. And so like it doesn't mean there's not work that needs to be done. And it doesn't mean like communication drops off a cliff. Like people still need to handle their business, but we tell people like take vacation, leave early on a Friday, but I don't care, leave early on a Tuesday, whatever you want to do. Have a hybrid work schedule, but do what you need to do so you can feel recharged. Because if you're trying to grind it out in the summer, you're just going to burn out in September. So we kind of use that for June, like May-ish when baseball season ends, depending on how the season goes through June to early July. And then late July, early August, that's like when okay, we're back to it. Like, let's ramp it up. But I know it sounds counterintuitive, but to set ourselves up for success in the summer, we tell our people to rest.
Yeah, it's important. Nick, what about you and your team at Montana? Do you have a parting word of advice for those that aspire to be team of the year, or is there one thing you make sure you always do in the summer to get ready?
This is going to be bad podcasting material, but I'm with JC. I think that the biggest thing that you can do to set yourself up for success is to be fully functioning and ready to go once the season start in August. I feel like a couple years ago we had an instance with that where it was the first week of school. We had, we do a ton with kind of welcome week with freshmen on campus and kind of getting them engaged and excited for the upcoming year during that week before school begins. We had a volleyball tournament, we had a soccer tournament, we had our first football game and some community events all within like a 10-day period. And I remember we got to Labor Day that year and everyone on our staff was like, I need a break. Like, we were exhausted. And part of that was because I think that, we were go, 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 and we were trying to do things, some really cool things. And I think that that is going to be the reality of working in college athletics and, just the reality of certain times of year, whether it's the start of the year or crossover seasons and stuff like that. But I think that the more that you can kind of go into the year recharged and ready to roll, it's going to set you up for success. Besides that, I mentioned setting goals, making sure that they're tangible goals that you can kind of look back on and measure and track and adjust. And I liked what John said about going through some of the award submissions and just kind of figuring out what you like that other people are doing. I mean, none of us are doing anything that has never been invented before. We're not doing anything that's takes a ton of it takes a ton of work and a ton of time, but more than anything, we're just trying to be creative and take what other people do and tailor it so that it works with our fans and our demographic. And so take advantage of other people's successes.
Yeah, I had an old friend of mine would always remind me creativity is a resource. Just as much as we talk about resources financially, like you have to replenish your creative resources. So I appreciate you both kind of sharing that. John, what about you? Advice from your chair or words of wisdom, anything you make sure you always do in the summer to get ready?
3 for 3. Take some time off. Right after NACMA, I always mandatory take that next week off. The whole week. We get Thursday off with Juneteenth, but I take my kids camping. I'm unreachable for that week, except we had a video board install, so it's a little reachable this year. That was happening later than expected, so I had to take a couple calls there. But no, definitely take time off. JC's point, it's not just taking a week off. It's take a morning to go take your kids to a volleyball camp like I have next week, or golfing or whatever. Just try to get some of that unplugged time in. It's so vital, so vital for us. Um, as far as getting the work done, because that's also part of why we're so successful is we kind of we throw a million things at that whiteboard, like I said. But then what do you do with it? What do you do with the chaos of all the ideas that multiple people in multiple schools have thrown into your queue now? And it's starting to just identify what's urgent and what's important. I think that's a Eisenhower piece where you have to create the distinguishing factors between the two. Orders, like if I don't order these shirts for my team next year, I'm not taking care of my staff and they're the ones that are going to take care of me. So I need to get these orders done. What are some important things, like planning for media days, meeting with coaches, getting those preseason meetings done. We always do a 2-week warning before the season starts, just to make sure that things that we've been going on in the preseason meeting are actually in there and giving that coach an update, so they're not, they're pumping the brakes a little bit on their nerves too, getting into the season. And then recapping very, very strongly after we get through with their seasons as much as possible. But finding out what's important, what's urgent. Of the million things that we have on our board, we're going to get to 10. Let's be real. I don't have the resources to get to all million. So we've got to knock out those top 10. What are the most important? And that also helps with buy-in with the team. When you have all these ideas, you hear everybody's inputs and you rank them all up there, and everybody gets a chance to put in their voice, and you see these are the things that we all agree are really going to move us forward more this year than the others. The people who might have had the ideas that didn't quite make the cut are going to be like, yep, I'm on board. Let's go. And that's what we talk about in our beginning of the year meeting before all of our students kind of get going, and just helping to make sure that they understand that and go through that process with them quickly. But it's really important, urgent, important, and then kind of create those comp plans, condense, make it into projects, make it tasks, make it tangible. Don't just let it be ethereal and never actually come around in full circle. The goals are great. I love goals. Our goal is just get better every day. And if we continue to do the things, we cannot lose track of the things that we are doing. Those are important. That's what's differentiating us, is the consistency. Then let's put these really important things in, and then let's add some sprinkles as we get into our groove in the middle of the fall, because we all know we hit that rhythm a couple games in, 3, 4 games in, and all of a sudden everybody is on cruise control, and you don't want them to burn out. So you got to keep those kind of fun little sprinkles that don't push them over the edge, but give them some kind of new excitement in the middle of it all. And sometimes it takes care of itself, but sometimes you have to be intentional of it. Say you have a team that isn't successful on the field, and you need to find new things to make it interesting and innovative. And so to have those things in your idea farm, ready to pick it out and plant it and let it go when you have the opportunity, those are huge. Like, we don't let the ideas from 2-3 years ago go from those NACMA ideas. They sit in a categorized idea farm based on the categories, in the NACMA, nice and clean, right? And then whenever we say, okay, we have this game and it's going to be huge, but we don't really have a theme, or we need a promotion. Great, let's go to the idea farm. Engagement opportunities. What do we got? Like, cool. And then innovate, and then find a partner, because obviously revenue is important, to make that dream and idea come true, and fertilize it, because that's what's really going to make it grow to new heights.
That's fantastic. So I would say, to sum it up, focus on areas where you can have the biggest impact. Think broadly, to JC's point about revenue as a result, and there's ways to impact it beyond just selling a ticket, right? Think strategically and intentionally with those things. I think one of the things NACMA does best is provide a ton of resources, right? So tap into those things. To John's example, use the NACMA community, use your networks. What works at Minnesota State Moorhead may very well work at Virginia Tech, and vice versa, but it's finding out what makes it unique to you. And you heard it here first. Take, from the reigning teams of the year, take some time off. It is okay to take breaks, take vacation, take the time you need. Clearly, you can be team of the year and have a ton of success, and do it in a way that's still healthy and gives some work-life balance. So again, appreciate you three. Congratulations again on a tremendous 24-25 season. And I'm sure we'll see your names littered across the Best of awards as we go moving forward. But again, thank you all for your time.